So I just want to make this short video to explain blood groups. Blood groups are a way of our body identifying what blood is our own and what blood it's not compatible with. So everybody's blood falls into a particular blood group, and we split it into two systems. We have the AB system and the rhesus system. But either way, it works on a system of antibodies and antigens, and these should be terms that you're reasonably familiar with. An antigen is something that the cell displays on its cell membrane to identify it. It's like its name tag. An antibody is a part of the immune system that we have floating around in our blood, and it helps our body identify things that aren't cells that need to be got rid of. So if we think about the AB system first, this splits everybody into four groups. We have A, B, AB, or O. So if you are an A blood group, then your erythrocytes, so your red blood cells, display A antigens on their surface. And therefore, in your plasma, you have antibodies to B antigens. So if your body was to encounter erythrocytes with a B antigen, then the antibodies in your blood would bind to them, flag them as non-self, and your body would try and get rid of them. Now, a B blood group is exactly the opposite. B blood groups have B antigens on their erythrocytes and A antibodies floating around in the plasma. Now, if you are AB, then you have both A and B antigens on your erythrocyte membrane. And therefore, you don't produce any antibodies, because if you produced A or B antibodies, then it would recognise this cell is not its own. So AB blood group have no antibodies in their blood. And an O displays no antigens on its surface, and therefore they have A and B antibodies in the blood. So to put it simply, if you have the letter in the blood group, then you will not have that antibody. If you don't have the letter in your blood group, then you will have that antibody. And O quite simply has no antigens and therefore has all the antibodies. So that's the first system, the AB system. Then the rhesus system just has two categories, and it has a positive and a negative category. So if you are a rhesus positive, then you display positive antigens on your surface and you do not create any antibodies. If you are a negative, which is what we can see here, you have no antigens on your surface, and therefore you have positive antibodies in your blood. So these two systems combine, and you can be A, B, AB, or O, and you can also be a positive or negative of all four of those. So therefore there are 8 possible blood groups to which we all fit into. So what's the significance? Why am I telling you this? Well, blood groups are important because it dictates the kind of blood we would be able to tolerate were we to require a blood transfusion. If you receive the wrong type of blood, then it causes the blood to coagulate into lumps, and therefore that causes problems and it can actually be a fatal reaction. And it's all because of these antibodies that we create in our own bloodstream that could potentially react with blood that we are given and cause this non-self reaction. So we have two things that we can think about. We think about a group called the universal donor and also a group called the universal recipient. So let's think about universal donor first. We call O negative blood the universal donor, and the reason it's that is because anybody can be given O negative blood. So it's a universal donor in that it can be donated to anyone. And you might have heard that if you're into watching hospital dramas or anything like that, they often ask for O-neg blood. And that's because in an emergency situation, if a person's losing a lot of blood, you may not have time to check what blood group they are. So until you've done so, you just give them O-negative. And the reason why anybody can be given O-negative blood is because it has no antigens on its surface. So no matter which antibodies, if any, that the person creates, they won't react with the O-negative blood because it has no A, no B, or positive antigens on the surface. So it can be given to anyone. However, patients who are O-negative themselves cannot be given any other type of blood because they generate every possible antibody. They have A, B, and positive antibodies. So if they were to be given anything else, they would have a transfusion reaction. So O-negative blood can be given to anyone, but if you are O-negative, you can only receive O-negative yourself. Now, the other category I mentioned was AB positive, and this is called the universal recipient, because if you are AB positive, then you can receive any type of blood because you have no antibodies. Your own blood displays A, B, and positive antigens, and therefore you create no antibodies. However, AB positive blood cannot be given to any other blood group because it displays all the antigens, and every other blood group will create antibodies. So whilst it's a bonus yourself to be AB positive, it's not a blood that can be used for many other categories. And the other combinations of A's and B's and positives and negatives, whilst important, are not the categories that we tend to remember so often. So remember O negative because it displays no antigens and therefore it can be given to everyone, and that is the universal donor. And we remember AB positive because people who are AB positive create no antigens and therefore they can receive any type of blood.